My name is Mark Masterson. Thanks for coming out today. I'm the regional lead for Europe for startup-facing stuff for developer relations for Google. And I'm going to do two talks today, back to back. I literally just jumped off the airplane, was in the airport less than 20 minutes ago. I'm going to do these two talks, and then I'm going to run back out and get back on an airplane. So if you have some questions, you're going to have to grab me right at the end as quick as you can, all right? Otherwise, my Twitter handle and everything else will be on the slides as we go along, so ping me afterwards on Twitter, please. Ask me anything you like. So what are we going to talk about in the first talk? In the first talk, which is called Lean Startup Meets Android, which is a rather pretentious title, we're going to talk about these things. And primarily, we're going to be talking about this concept that I refer to as product business fit, and I'm going to define what that is and try to explain it to you. What are we not going to talk about? So, using this probably apocryphal citation from Karl Marx, what I'm not going to do today is give you any fish. I'm going to try to teach you how to catch one yourself. So if what you've come here today hoping to see is this, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not doing any of this. Instead, what I'm going to be doing today is talking about concepts and ideas and kind of high-level, airy-fairy things. But I will, towards the back of this first talk, try to make them as concrete as possible. So in essence, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trying to explain what this concept of product business fit is. And then I'm going to show you some examples of how you can do some of what I'm talking about using stuff from Android. So let's get into it. First thing is, I'm using as a framing mechanism, as a way to have kind of a common vocabulary with you, concepts out of this book. Hands up, have you read this book? Right, that's pretty good. That's a higher than usual rate, which is probably a consequence of being at this very startup-focused conference called Slush. So this book, if you haven't read it, is about a particular way to run your business as a startup, and it uses a bunch of concepts itself. The reason why I use this is, again, so that we have kind of a common language. There are a million different ways to describe the beautiful diversity of all of the billions and billions of business models that you out there with your startups might have. In his book, Reith came up with a way to categorize them into just 3 buckets. Whether we agree with those 3 buckets or not, and this is a great conversation to have over a beer, whether there's 5 or 6 or 2 or 1, doesn't really matter. For the purposes of the talk, these 3 buckets give me a way to frame the conversation in a manner that hopefully will make some sense. So he talks about, in his book, these 3 categories. These are categories of business models, and he calls them engines of growth. And he says there is a sticky model, a viral model, and a paid model, right? So let's go through them real quickly. A refresher if you've read the book, and I'll try to explain it in enough detail that you'll understand the rest of what I'm babbling about if you haven't read the book. So the first one is the sticky model of growth. And in the sticky model of growth, what you're aiming for is what's called organic growth. This means, number one, you're not paying for it. So it's not a thing that you're putting out cash to acquire users for. And number two, it's an engine that kind of drives itself. The core of a sticky model of growth is typically some kind of recurring event, something that happens over and over again. And in a sticky model of growth, that recurring event draws users in and keeps them stuck. That's why it's called that, so you don't lose them. In each of these models, in each of these business model categories, there's a formula that describes the category and how it works. And in this one, the formula is pretty simple. If you're acquiring users faster than you're losing them, that's what customer acquisition greater than churn means, you're good to go. So as we go through this, I'm going to show you some examples of how a sticky engine of growth might be implemented with Android, and I'm going to try to explain how that fits into the larger conceptual framework as well. The viral model of growth. This is the one everybody wants to do. It's also the hardest to do. This is the one where every 1 user you acquire brings in N extra users with them. The thing that I think almost everyone gets wrong, because it's very hard to model in anything other than viruses, the real ones, the kind where I sneeze on you and you get a cold, is that viruses aren't optional. You don't get to opt out. You don't get to choose. You don't get to say, no thanks. When I sneeze on you, you're going to get the cold, whether you want it or not. In order for a true viral model to work, your software has to somehow emulate that as best it can. The canonical example of this is something like early PayPal. When I sent my grandmother, who lives still in the States, $60, the only way that she could get it at the time, she'd get an email from PayPal saying, Marcus sent you $60. If you want it, join PayPal. Viral. And finally, the sticky model of growth. This is the most traditional, the most familiar to most people. This is the one where the famous customer acquisition cost, CAC metric, makes the most sense. And this is the one where you're paying somebody else to acquire users for your business. Advertising is the canonical example of this. And in this particular model, the formula is also very simple, but very subtle. If your customer acquisition cost is less than the long-term value of the customer that you acquired, you're good to go. Otherwise, you're not. Anybody got any questions about those? Do they make rough sense? Because that's all we really need to proceed. Okay. So what's this product business fit thing? How many people have heard of this term, product market fit? How many people know who Marc Andreessen is? What did he do? Netscape. Netscape. He's the guy that invented Netscape. But you have to be either a total geek or really old, and you don't look either one of those, so I'm not sure how you knew that. To know that, usually. I'm both. After he invented Netscape and made a lot of money, he went off to the Valley and founded a venture capital firm called Andreessen Horowitz, and it's from that latter phase, it's his latter work with Andreessen Horowitz, where he came up with this term. He's famous for saying two things, this and software is eating the world. This one in particular means that you've got a product, and you've got some market niche that you've identified that product is suitable for, and you can fit them together, then the odds of your being successful are fairly high. At Google, in my role, so what I do is I run the startup-facing programs, again, for developer relations at Google, and I do that across Europe. But I'm also part of the global team that does that around the world. So I've been with Google now for just under a year. I've spoken in person to probably something close to 1,000 startups. I have access via the global database to data about startups that is orders of magnitude larger than that. And I can see something. I can see a pattern. And this pattern is really an anti-pattern. What I can see in the data is a thing, a way of visualizing and talking about how startups go to market and do business and how that's related to how they do product management and product development that this buzzword is attempting to articulate. And it's this. When your product is driving your business, and not the other way around, the odds of your success are much higher. So I've drawn some pictures to try to make that even more clear, because it's a subtle concept, and I'm still working out how to describe it. This is a funnel. And in the case we're going to be talking about now, it's a funnel that represents the world of pain that your CTO lives in. So in his world, somebody, a UX guy, marketing guy, maybe both of them, maybe the CEO, they're sitting around, they're doing user journeys and personas and use cases and stories, and they're basically working out a bucket load of features that they throw into the wide end of this funnel. They say, I want, right? And the first thing that happens is the CTO goes, right about there at the orange level, he goes, fuck no, you can't have that. There's just no way you can have that, right? That's too much. So we'll shrink that bucket down to this size. And then he does something interesting. He turns around and together with your team of developers and whoever else, he goes and he starts to try to make that thing along the lines of the set of features that he or she agreed to. And he finds something out. He discovers in the process of doing that, oh, damn it, can't do that, throws one out. Damn it, can't do that either, throws one out. And by the time he's down here to the end of the funnel, he's thrown out maybe half of the things that he promised he could do for you, and you're now getting close to releasing a product. Right? More or less how it works? Sometimes it's better than that, sometimes it's worse. But that's more or less on average how it works, and that describes the world of pain that the CTO lives in, right? Interestingly, let's take all the things off the funnel. There's another part of your business where you explicitly talk about a funnel, where it's the dominant metaphor that drives almost everything you do, and that's the famous sales funnel, right? And in the sales funnel, we have a similar set of steps. We have, right at the beginning, something like awareness or identification, discoverability, that place where the customer first knows you exist. In the middle step, we have that engagement step where they know you exist, and they've come to kind of check you out, but not quite yet open the wallet up and giving you any money. And then at the end of the funnel, we have commit, and you get cash, right? Sales funnel. The interesting thing is, in most organizations that we're looking at, these two funnels align more or less like this. You've got the CTO's funnel, which is basically kind of a precursor to the sales funnel. The CTO's funnel, the product development funnel, whatever you want to call it, pushes the unicorn out. And then your salespeople, whoever they are, marketing people, whatever you refer to them as, take that thing and they try to kick it down their funnel like a passive object, like a ball. Or if you're thinking of the unicorn analogy, they're literally trying to whack its ass down your funnel, right? But the key insight is it's an object that moves down this ladder funnel. There's another pattern, and it's focused on the realization that ultimately the unicorn doesn't matter very much, only this does. And it looks like this. In this other pattern, and I see this only very rarely, which is why I figured, ooh, we need to talk about this. The two funnels run in parallel, and they're aligned. And what happens is, as things go into one funnel, they influence one another. And in particular, what we see happening is that at the product architecture level, we see the product developing features, the purpose of which is to drive the other funnel at the stage that it's linked up at. So you see features in the product, the purpose of which is to increase discoverability, to increase awareness of the product. You see features in the product, the purpose of which is to make that engagement step easier, better, irresistible. You see features in the product, again, that are there to make that commitment step easier, better, irresistible. You do not see the unicorn prancing down the second funnel as a passive object. You see it as an active object interacting with the other funnel, driving it. And this is what I mean when I talk about product business fit. In this rare variant, the product drives the business, not the other way around. It's an active participant in the overall process. I'm still crunching data on this. The data points are still too rare to really talk confidently about a pattern. Correlation is not causation. All those things that statisticians and data scientists are always careful to warn you about and caveat emptor and take the following with a massive, I mean mountain, Himalayan-sized grain of salt, right? But there is, I think, a correlation. I can sort of see it in the data that's available to us between this pattern and having one of these. In the other pattern, I don't see any of these. So what does that look like then? Let's see some examples. This is a completely made up and imaginary app. And it looks like rubbish for a reason. If it wasn't rubbish, you or I would go out and implement it and make some money, right? It's just an imaginary app for the purposes of the conversation. Here's what it does. I've just had a baby. He's 9 months old. And as a new father, my life is dominated by one thing in particular. I need nappies, diapers, all the time. Every time I go to the shops, I need to remember, get some bloody nappies, right? So I thought, all right, let's do a sticky app that uses that you need to remember to buy fucking nappies mark to remind me in a store to do that. And let's imagine that, I don't know, the startup that's come up with this app has some affiliate program with the stores that I frequent and patronize, and every time I go through the store, if I buy the thing that they remind me to buy, the startup could earn some money off that affiliate program. That would be a recurring monetizable event. And if that existed, that recurring monetizable event, then you could build an app that reminded me, hey Mark, get some diapers. How would it do that? Well, the phone would know where I am, right? It would use things like geolocation and geofencing APIs from Google. It would use things like Eddystone, the new beacons technology. It would use things like RFID. It would know where I am. It would know where the nappies are. When I walk past them in the store, it would go, hey Mark, you just walked past nappies and you forgot to pick some up. That's a sticky app. And what it's doing is it's trying to exploit software architecture things to make the commit step in the sales funnel irresistible. Irresistible. All three of my examples today are going to talk about the commit step because the discoverability and the engage step are very context dependent and even harder to come up with even these lousy examples for, so you have to bear with me. But again, hit me up on Twitter at that handle down there, and I'd love to talk to you about it. In particular, what I'm looking for is more data. This app can be implemented today. I mean, if it wasn't rubbish and there was an actual business plan behind it. These are the Google technologies that you could use to build this. And the point here is that these are real Android things, or Play Services things, or other Google platform things that you can use to go implement Sticky. And they're focused at the commit stage of Sticky. This is a way of thinking about your product architecture. To think, man, is my product a passive ball that just gets kicked down the sales funnel? Do I churn it out and do the marketing guys then have to go do a campaign and figure out how to get clicks and how to drive re-engagement? And do they do all of that completely independent of me? Or am I trying to figure out ways in the product architecture to drive the funnel? Let's do a viral example. In this example, what we've got is basically a Bitcoin wallet. That's all it is. And it has a manner of, it as a way of transferring Bitcoins between two wallets. Again, completely imaginary. To do that, I do a sneaky thing. So who's heard of the Play Services APIs? That's not enough hands. So who's working on an Android app? Let's do that one first. Yeah, see, that wasn't enough hands before. So the Play Services APIs are a set of things that Google has made available to you, the purpose of which is to combat fragmentation. Full stop. That's why they're there. Why are we doing that? Because fragmentation sucks, right? So the Play Services API are a place where we're centralizing and maintaining control over really core important things. They're not in the Android kernel on the device anymore. They're in the Play Services APIs. A side effect of that is there's a ton of cool shit out there in the Play Services APIs available to you for free. Some of them are hiding. For example, this is the subset of Play Services APIs for game developers. You don't have to be actually developing a game to use them, though. So my Bitcoin wallet, it uses a thing called GIFs from the Play Services Games API. The GIFs API is meant to do something like if you're in a game and your game has some kind of virtual thing, currencies, level ups, extra swords, whatever, and you want to be able to give one from one user to another, that's what that's there for. But there's nothing in the API that prevents you from signing up as a game developer, even though you're not, and using it to do other things where that makes sense. Why would you do that? Well, because of that quote. If one user of an app, if one user who's signed up as a, they have a Google identity, does not have the app that they're being prompted to receive a gift from, the API will go and download the app for them. Boom. Viral. You want what I just gave you? Get the app. And this mechanism will force that to happen. There are some other things that we should talk about. If what you're looking at is a viral model on Google platforms, we should talk about these. How many people have a Google Play badge if they already have an Android app? The Google Play badge is free. You go to a form on developers.google.com and you tell us what your Google Play Store link is and a couple other things, and we give you the badge. That's it. That's all there is to it. Look at what happens when you have it. 47% more likely to download your app. There's a trust factor here. There's psychology that the sociologists can talk about. I'm not good at that, but the point is, why would you leave that 47% of money on the table for a free thing that you can just stick on your website? And yet, consistently, less than half of Android developers do this. Over-the-air installs, who's heard of that? Right. So over-the-air installs, that's where if a user who comes to your website is logged on with Google Identities Toolkit. So it's that log on with Google badge that's stacked usually with log on with Facebook, log on with Twitter, log on with Instagram, whatever. If they're logged on with Google, when they hit your website, we'll know who they are and which devices they have. And we'll say to them on your website, they've got an app for this, you want it? And if they say yes, it just downloads to their device. There is no sidestep to the App Store, no additional hurdles. Again, remember I said you're looking for app architecture things that engage at the funnel stage. This is at the engagement stage, right? right smack in the middle of the crosshairs of the engagement stage. They've come to your landing page. They're looking at you. And if you do this free thing, your install acceptance rates goes up by 40%. Who's heard of the word facepalm? How many people didn't know about this? Facepalm yourself. I mean, come on. All of this stuff for a viral app is real and you could use it today. Some of it requires you to be a bit creative, like using things that we don't necessarily tell you flat out you can use for this, like the Play Game Services APIs. But dude, you're a startup. You got to be looking to get around the rules a bit here, right? You shouldn't need me to stand up on stage and tell you, hey, you know what? Guess what? All right, let's look at a paid app. This is the most conventional, the most obvious, but also there are some subtle things in here as well. So this is the premise for the paid app. You got this aging rap titan, Master Mark, that's me. And he's got a media app where he communicates with his fans, right? And what he basically does is he's dropping a piece of content on a regular basis. So every now and then I do a gig and then I drop a piece of content in the app that my users should download. That essentially means that each piece of content is its own new campaign. And in terms of what I was talking about before, each piece of content is essentially a product. And rather than kick it down the funnel, each piece of content should be trying to participate in the funnel. The app itself is really just a marketing framework for those products that each piece of content represents. That too is the kind of thing I often get embroiled in when I'm talking about these concepts with startups. You need to be really clear in your mind about what the product is. Sometimes you confuse the terms product and marketing and you mix them up. The most glaring example of this that I've seen is I was talking to a startup at an accelerator in the north of the UK about 3 weeks ago. They're doing an educational app. It's for children ages 4 to 12, roughly, and it's about doing maths homework. And it's an iPad-only app, and they've done a tremendous amount of work on really cool algorithms and on the user interface and things that will engage with children and get children excited about doing maths homework and get them to participate and do the thing on the iPad. I said, cool. How are you going to make money? And they said, well, after the child has succeeded a bit on the free app, we're going to send the parents an email and say, your child's succeeding. Buy some premium content. I said, all right, I get that. That could work. Here's your problem. The email is your product. Everywhere we go, everything we do as a startup, somewhere inside your business model, there's a customer with a capital C. Which customer is that? The one that gives you some money. And somewhere inside your business model, therefore, there is a transaction with a capital T. What is that? The moment when that customer will give you some money. That transaction is the throbbing heart of your business. And product business fit is also about the fact that your entire architecture, from the software to the marketing to everything else in your business, should be centered on that transaction, that throbbing heart. If it's not, you've got waste, you've got stupidity, you're going to fail. So to these guys, I said, look, you know what you should be doing? They were in a 4-week accelerator program. They had less than 3 weeks when I spoke to them to get to a demo day moment where they were going to go pitch to investors. And I said, dude, you know what? Here's what's happening when you go into this kind of a demo day event. You are trying to communicate to the investor that you're competent, that you know your business. Don't go in there, as people often do, and say, my addressable market is 4 billion and there are this many customers. Who gives a fuck? What you're trying to communicate to them is that you know something special about that and that you're competent about it. So in your case, here's what I would do. I would say, we had 3 weeks. We got a working prototype of this app up, and then we stopped, and we went and we focused on this email. And we multivariate tested the crap out of this email. We tested 6,000 versions of it, and this one, Mr. Investor, is the one with the highest conversion rate. Why did we take that approach? Because we understand the business that we're in, and we know how to make us money. That's all an investor wants to hear. If you can convince them that you can make yourselves, plural, make money, they'll open the wallet up and give you some. Focusing on that email meant I understand what drives my business. And these are the things I'm focusing time and resources and effort on. Focusing on the iPad app means I don't understand that. And I'm focusing on the things that I think are cool. The product is the thing that drives that transaction. And in Mastermark, the Rap Titans case, that means it's those pieces of content. So how do we market them? Every time I drop a new piece of content, I basically need a new campaign. Well, that slide doesn't fit on the thing very well. I've probably taken it out of present, that's why. So there are some really cool statistics out there about the power and the vibrancy of the app economy, but there are also some terrifying ones. So who's heard the statistic about the 3 apps? Do you know that one? So there's some research that's been done that suggests that the majority of users, certainly in developed Western nations, spend the majority of their time, there's different studies that have different numbers, so I won't bother with a number, in just 3 apps. Just 3. And we all know one of them is the horrible big blue face thing. So you're competing to be one of the other 2. Right out of the gate, you're doomed. On top of that, you layer on additional research that shows that the typical user gets a new app, opens it up, looks at it for 10 minutes, and never looks at it again. Right? So these are the odds that you're facing, and this is what Mastermark, the Rap Titan, has to combat to get the user to come back every time and look at a new piece of content. For those kinds of things, we offer a bunch of tools that may be of use to you. And in particular, what you're looking for in this kind of a model is the re-engagement factor. How do you get users to look at your stuff again? The most important thing that you can do is a thing called app indexing. Heard of that? Bad news. Bad news. So here's why app indexing is really important to you. And it's important to you whether you are a Google fanboy or you're just working over on some fruit-based alternative. Here's why app indexing is important to you. App indexing, which goes by different names depending on which religion you happen to be speaking at the time, is basically about saying to someone, hey dude, inside my app, there are things of relevance, things that are important, things that I want to surface and make visible to the rest of the world. In Mastermark's app, for example, it's those individual pieces of content. Every time he drops one, he needs the world to see it and be able to go straight to it, right? App indexing is the mechanism for Google where you tell us what that structure looks like. It's free, you go fill out a form, upload some stuff, and you tell us, my app has these links inside of it. Great things happen when you do that. Number 1, you go straight up in your organic search results. Do you know what that means? SEO, organic search results? Wouldn't you rather go up than down? There's a free thing you can do that would make you go up. Let's do that facepalm thing again, please. Facepalm, right? So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is, if you then engage with us with some of the paid tools, what will happen are things like this. Say your piece of linked content, or whatever it is inside your app, is mappable to some search term. In Mastermark's term, it might be gigs in Soho or something, right? User does a search for gigs in Soho. Google will then tell that user, because I know who they are, I know lots of crap about them, including their devices and what apps are on them, and you told me links inside your app. Hey, in the search results, I will then say to the user who's just done that random search on gigs in Soho, had nothing to do with your app, had nothing to do with your company, your brand, or anything else, hey dude, you've got this app. Did you forget? And oh, by the way, Mastermark just dropped a new piece of content. It's right here. And that link will be promoted and put right next to the search results. And all you really have to do to get that magic working is that free app indexing stuff. How many people have more than one app? So of that set, let's do set theory again, of that set, how many people knew that you can advertise your other apps for free on the AdMob network? Hey, that's a greater than 0 response rate. Excellent. Facepalm again. So here's the thing. If you've got more than one app on the Play Store, right? And the typical profile here is a games publisher, but it applies to lots and lots of publishers of companies now in 2015. You can use our AdMob network, which is the mechanism that makes those ugly banner ads fly by at the bottom of a game that's supported by ads. You can use that in your own apps to cross-promote your other apps for free. Free stuff that you're not using to improve your business. Let's do that facepalm thing again. Right? And finally, there is a thing deep inside Google's toolkit that I think you should be aware of. We're working over the course of the coming year to kind of push some of this stuff up to the top and make it more visible to you. So, our bad, some of this stuff is too hidden, but you can already use it despite the fact that it is. And that's a thing called the conversion optimizer. So what this is basically just a tick box buried inside our toolkit, and one of the analytics people will have to show you where, because I always forget, it's that well hidden. But once you've ticked it, it will begin to find the high-value users for you. It will put Google's machine learning engines of doom to work on the back end, looking for the highest value users for your app. And it will begin to push targeted search results at them. If you've done app indexing, hey, guess what will happen? Et cetera, et cetera. You can also use it to pull email lists for targeted re-engagement campaigns, yada, 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 yada. All by finding the right box and ticking it. This is not a facepalm, again, because we hit it too well, but watch this space, because over the course of the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to be releasing some stuff for app developers, for mobile developers, that will make this much easier and much more prominent to get access to and to use. It's all there, it's all real, and most of it is free. So a brief blurb, just in case some of you are going to skive off before the next talk, which is, I'm doing back-to-back talks here. What the program that I run globally, and in Europe in particular, is called Launchpad, right? And it gives you a grab bag of benefits like cloud credits and AdWords credits and things like that. But its primary benefit for you, and it's all hiding behind this URL, is that it gets you into the program. Why is that good? Because it puts you in my database. I can see you. I know what you're doing. So that means that I can push things to you. If there's an event happening somewhere close to you, typically that's going to be Stockholm, quite frankly, but it's closer to you than most of the other places that I could push an event at in your particular region here. But in London, in Berlin, in Paris, wherever, if there's something going on that's relevant to you because I know, oh, hey, you're doing an Internet of Things startup, I can push Internet of Things stuff at you. Equally, I can begin to interact with you. You tell me more stuff about what you're doing, and I can begin to respond in a richer way. It's this soft, kind of long-term benefits that I think are the real benefit of being in the program. The extreme end of this spectrum, and warning, caveat emptor, right? Same Himalayan-sized grain of salt. This will not happen to you. Lottery odds. One startup in the last 9 months that I met at an accelerator that I learned about and spoke to and got in contact with because of this program was doing something with parking data that was very cool. So I took them to meet the Maps for Work team. They hit it off really well, signed an NDA. They now do a joint go-to-market where our large customer salespeople takes this startup into customers and sells their stuff along with ours. That won't happen to you. Probably. But it could, and it only can if you sign up for Launchpad. Now, we've had a recurring theme in here about these things that Google offers that I've been using as examples. How much were they? How much did they cost on average? How much do you figure the Launchpad program costs? Go sign up, right? And then let's have a chat. All right, that's the end of this talk.